Okay, so now we're ready to get started. So the cool thing with doing grid drawings is that it can take, or it's a tool a beginner can use to have something very, very accurate, um, even for a complex drawing. So as long as you do it correctly. But the key to doing it correctly is drawing exactly what you see in each box and not what you think you see. So most students look at me funny when I say that, but it's very true, because the whole idea is you want to focus on, like, you're not drawing the tip of an ear here, right? You're drawing the exact shape that you see in that box, okay? So when you're finished, you'll have a wolf, but throughout the process, you're not drawing a wolf. You're drawing shapes and lines that you see, okay? Or contour lines, so, or shapes, like this, for example, that dark area, that's something you'd probably want to, well, you definitely want to put in there, because that's going to tell you an area that you would need to shade or have a darker color or lighter color. So, and I'll show you that in just a second. But so what we want to do is you can start wherever you'd like. I would start somewhere on the outer edges of the image. It's the easiest part. And then just work your way around and all throughout. Keep in mind, though, if you're right-handed, say, for example, if I start over here on the right side and then here in a minute, a little bit, I have to draw the nose. Well, I'm going to be touching this part with my hand, and it could smear it and drag it and stuff. So you might want to, if you're a right-handed person, start on the left side and work your way across. If you're left-handed, start on the right side and work your way that way. That way that you're not smearing and doing that. You could also use a cover piece of paper, while you're drawing. Up to you, whatever you want to do. But I think I will start up here on that ear. Okay, so that's going to be H1 is going to be the square. So then I come over here and I find H is here and 1 is here. Okay, so I just come over 2 squares in. Or excuse me, 3 squares in. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing, and maybe I'll try to use this as an example here. Okay, so we're going to cover up what I don't want to see. Okay, so all I want to see is going to be what's in this box H1. Okay, so, and you can even bring it over here so that you're right here on it. So the trick here to be able to draw exactly what you're seeing and in proportion in your box is using the lines themselves. Most people are familiar with being able to see a halfway point in something, as well as break things down into thirds or fourths. So that's the same thing that you'll want to do with this. So for example, just because this line you can see it and there's nothing here, you want to find the halfway point. Okay, so from here where the image stops to here, so within that box, the halfway point. You want to kind of just, I mean, it's a guesstimation. You get better at it the more you do it, but right there is going to be about the halfway point. Okay, so then from there, if you break down that into another half, then you can do that. Or for example, if you had something else that was a little bit more intricate or complex, you could even break that down into thirds from there. Okay, so it kind of just depends on what's in your box on how you're going to do it. But for me, that halfway point, I'm going to do it for this one too, is about right there. Okay, and those should, they line up pretty well. But what that kind of tells you, and you can draw on this because this is your image. Looky there, it shows me that the tip of the ear comes right at the halfway point. That's where it peaks at, is right there at the halfway point. So then what we need to do is come over here to our drawing, and here's the box we're working within. We're going to find that halfway point, which is about right there, very, very lightly. Draw those little tick marks just so that we can kind of see, keep as far as where we're at. And then from there, because the ear, this shape, it's not an ear, right? This shape, you kind of can see it here. And if you need to, you can trace it so that you see that shape. Okay, so it's almost kind of like almost like a roller coaster, I guess, if you want to think of it like that, or a mountain. So we want to know where it crosses into that, out of that box. Okay, so if you kind of trace it like that, you can see that line. So if I'm looking at from the bottom of this box to the middle, well, where is that line at? It's really about the one, if you break that into thirds, it's almost perfectly 1/3 down. Okay, I zoomed in a little bit, and I got a darker pencil because I saw that you weren't really being able to see it there. So I'm going to go over that again just to kind of show it a little bit better. So we've got that halfway point right there and right there. Okay, so then from there we want to know where, like I said, you can go through and trace it. Okay, that shape, that roller coaster shape we've got there. You want to know where it goes out. So right there is where it's going out of that box. Okay, so then from there, like I said, we can divide that box. That's about that 1/3 mark. So then I could do that, that's another third right there. And that's a third. Okay, so then from there we can go over here to our box that we're going to be drawing on in. That halfway point is here and here. Now you won't be using a dark pencil like this, but I'm doing it just for the sake of you being able to see it. And then from there, so there's the halfway point. We want to break that into thirds. So here's that broken into thirds. Does that make sense? So then we know that that first one underneath is going to be right here, right? That's the one where our roller coaster is leaving the box. So now what we want to do is we know that this line that's coming through here is going to be the part of where it peaks, right? So we want to look at the shape, that line that we're seeing there, at the shape of it, on how we're going to draw it. So then we're just going to kind of mimic that. And if you need to trace it over a few times like that on your picture, bring it over here and just mimic it, you can. Okay. And then we know that from once it hits that peak at the halfway point, it's going to come back down. Now we need to know where it exits this side of the box. So it exits right here. Okay. So then again, we can break that box into halves. So here's the halfway point. So we're looking at that is there. And then again, that's going to be another, break it down into thirds. And then we've got three parts here. And then that one's going to be exiting on that last one. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll come over here. We'll find the halfway point here. There it is. And then if you break this box into thirds, we know that that one's going to be exiting right here at this one. And so then if you want to trace that to get the idea of what that shape is and bring it up, and there you are. So there's that shape. You kind of have that roller coaster shape within that box. Okay. And that's going to be what is the tip of that ear. Now, if you want to go a little bit further with this, it just depends on how realistic you're wanting to get with it and detailed. If you want to look at, you see right here where the color changes, where this red turns into white, you could also map it out kind of like that. Okay. And then you could come back in here and you do the same thing. So you see that the white pretty much is right here on this second third that we mapped out, and it's going to have that same idea and then come to almost this third that's over here. So it actually kind of works out well that it follows that almost that same pattern, the same shape, I guess. And then but it doesn't quite come all the way to the line there. Well, yeah, it does. I'm sorry. It goes all kind of out. Okay. So it does cross over it right there. It's a little bit of a different shape. It's not exactly, because there is some variance in colors in there and darker areas. But that kind of gives you a basic idea so that when you come back in with your coloring, you'll be able to, or painting or whatever it is that your media you're using, you'll be able to go through and see those a little bit easier. And you know that the space that you have to work with that is the reddish color is the space right here. Whereas once you cross that line, then you're getting into the lighter colors. Okay. So try not to get too caught up in the details when it comes to that kind of stuff. But if you have just a few little marks made that kind of map out your territory a little bit that might help you later on, then that's good. Okay, so that's what you do in each box. So that's all that we have to draw of significance, right? Because this is all the background. So now we can move on to the next box. So the box that's right next to it, there's nothing in it. So we'll skip over it. That's going to be the G1. So then what we can do is, why don't we drop down to the box that's directly underneath the one we were working on so that we can continue on with what we were doing there. So because this wolf has fur, it's a little bit difficult to tell where its ear ends. I know just from the anatomy of a wolf that it is going to come down, it's similar to a dog, but it's going to come down to about right there. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of darken that a little bit so that I know where my line needs to stop. But that's what's going to help us here. But we also have that little bit of, there's a tuft, their hair that's on their head there, that it's standing up quite a bit. So with that, what we can do is we can kind of create a light line that maybe, explains that for us in our drawing so that we'll know that we need to come back and do our little tufts of hair sticking up. And we'll, again, that kind of is the, don't get too caught up in the detail with it. Just kind of give the idea of that there's something there. But first, let's go ahead and get this ear, this line that's coming down first. So, but again, we're not looking at this box that's next door. We're only looking at the one that's directly underneath it. So if you have to, you can cover it up so that you can't see it. So, but what we do need to do is we need to find out where that halfway point is in that box. So I'm seeing that it's about right there. Okay, so same thing over here, find that halfway point, it's about right there. Then from there, we need to know where does this line that's right here, where does it cross out of it? If it's a straight line, then sometimes that might be kind of easy, but you know, still be sure and check yourself. It's kind of like checking your math. You want to make sure that you check your work and make sure that it's correct. So let's go ahead and break this into thirds. Okay. And so by doing that, what happened is that it is showing that it's crossing the line basically in between those two marks I just made. So if I break this into thirds, this line is coming through and crossing right in between them. Okay. So then I can just do that and connect it. So that brings that down. Okay, so then what we need to do is go through and look, where else do I have some lines that are important in this box? Okay, so I see one that's kind of coming down right here, this dark one. This is where another color change is happening, but it's also kind of the point of the ear that is kind of where it's the ear's beginning and the head's ending. Okay, so that's a line that we definitely want to mark on here because we'll need to know that. So with that halfway point, it is going to be just a little below it, but I'm going to go ahead and map it out break it into thirds. Okay, so then same thing, I'm going to come over here and break this into thirds. And it looks like that line that I'm talking about that's here, that's of significance, is going to fall between the halfway and that first third. Okay, so if I know that line's about right here, okay, that's coming down, and then I can see, does it cross over the bottom of that square? And yes, it does. So it's going to come down to about right there, and looking at it, it's pretty much right in the middle, that halfway point. So here's our halfway point, and here's this. Now all I need to know is what is the angle of that line. So if I trace it with my pencil, follow it, bring it over, and bring it straight down, then that kind of is giving me that line there. Okay, so there's that line that's for the head and the ear connecting. So other than that, there's another line which is going to be kind of a continuation of this one where the color change is happening, where it goes from the red to the white. So we need to be able to kind of come down. So I'm going to trace that shape because it's kind of a funny one because it is hair. But if you kind of darken it, you can kind of see its shape a little bit better visually and to be able to mimic that over here. So we already know that it's coming through right here. And then because it doesn't cross out of the box anywhere, this is when it gets a little bit more challenging because then you kind of rely more on your observatory skills as far as being able to mimic that. So again, if it means that you need to trace it a few times, you can. You can also use, how far away from the side is it? If, for example, I can see that this one right here, that 1/3, I can see that shape ends right at it. Okay, and then same thing over here. Where does the bottom of that color stop? Well, it stops at that first 1/3 right here. Okay, so that kind of, you can use markers like that too to kind of determine. So I know that that's coming down right here, and I know that it curves just below the halfway point. Okay, so it's going to start curving. Here's the halfway point. It's going to curve, and it kind of does a little squiggle there and comes inwards and then comes back down and almost touches that line that we drew for the head. And then again, it's going to, the halfway point is here. It's going to come back upwards pretty much at the halfway point. And then it kind of spans outwards a little bit. And kind of, you can see where that darker color is. It kind of comes around. So again, you can use those marks. Halfway point is here on the right side. So let's go ahead and map that out. There's the halfway point. And There's the halfway point for that one. I've already got that. And then it looks like if I do halfway between the edge of the corner of the box and that halfway, that's about perfect for where it starts coming back down. Okay, and then it kind of comes back up in there, but again, this is that part where there's going to be a lot of blending going on, and the shape and the colors, that's something you can refer back to your image for to be able to get those exactly. You just kind of want to give yourself the idea of it. And kind of that same thing up in here. You could go through and do that line too to bring that darker, but I'm not going to because I don't think I need to worry about it. But what we can do, let's jump over to this box because that's pretty much all of the significant lines in this one. Let's jump over to the I2. Okay. And again, these kind of have a little bit of the tufts of hair kind of coming out. So, you know, it's a basic idea of it. Then you'll come back and you'll kind of do that when you're doing your fur. Okay, and then just to finish that, it goes to there. But I think you get the basis of this on how to do it. So the whole idea though is that you're going square by square to draw exactly what you see in that square. You don't want to just come through here and start going okay and just start. You can, but you're not going to be as accurate. Okay, so if you want it to be accurate and to be worth all the effort of doing these grids and drawings or the grid and all that, then make sure that you're doing it this way, square by square, drawing exactly the line or shape that you see in the square and not drawing what the object is. So that's the basics of doing a grid drawing. Okay, so I will go through and complete every single box that I see here with the things that I want to include in my drawing. Okay, so and then after that, then we'll come back through and erase. So let me grab my eraser here just to show you that real quickly. So this is a kneaded eraser. You may or may not have this. Regular erasers can work too, but you might just need to like cut off a little piece of it so that you can have a sharp point, because what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come back and erase these. The cool thing is these, you can shape them. They're kind of like Play-Doh, I guess, or like gum is kind of really what it feels like. But anyway, so you can come back through and you can erase the marks that you made that were your measurements, because you don't need those to be on there anymore. Because I use that darker pencil, that's why you're seeing them. So this is again why it's important to use very light pressure when you're doing these, because you don't want them to mess up your paper. So then you would come back through, and you would also come back through and erase your grid lines. You can do that too as you're going, or you can wait till the end. It's up to you.